Cache-maniacs.
GeoGearHeads.
We're glad you could join the Bad Cop, AirRaidFan, and myself, Daryl W4, for episode 62 of the GeoGearHeads. The Bad Cop and I have a couple of items to hit before we bring in AirRaidFan, so Bad Cop, let's start with a schedule for the next few weeks.
It sounds like a good plan, Daryl. We have some great shows coming up. Next week, we'll be recording Tools of the Trail. The following week, we're really excited to be joined by Veronica Belmont of Techzilla, The Sword and the Laser, and much more for a discussion of the future of location-based gaming. Then 2 weeks after that, John Robb joins us again to talk about lights for geocaching. So that's Tools of the Trail for episode 63. That's recording March 14th. Future of location-based gaming with Veronica Belmont for episode 64 on March 21st. Then 2 weeks later, on April 4th, we record the episode 66 on caching lights. So get your questions and feedback to us for any of these shows by calling our voicemail line at 206-350-3647. Of course, you can email us at GeoGearHeads at cacheamaniacs.com or through social media. And those links are available on our show notes. We'd love for you to send us one of those key items to carry out on the trail and why you use it for next week's show. Then the following week, let us know where geolocation-based gameplay is headed. Then, if you have questions about flashlight or torches, depends on where you're from, drop those to us for episode 66. That feedback really does help the show. Of course, you can watch us record these shows live through Google Plus Hangouts on Air or through the YouTube live stream. They're the same thing. And we start at about 6:10 p.m. Pacific. That's 9:10 p.m. if you're on the Eastern Zone. Much like you, Daryl.
Yeah, indeed. And we also post Google Plus events for each of those recording sessions, so you can add a reminder to your calendar from there. The next thing on my list, though, is a GeoGearHeads 2013 Traveler Race. We've only been running that for 7 days as of this recording, and Bushman Family's Purple Monster Traveler has a significant lead with 6 points when I checked this morning. In second place is the Four Freds QR Code Travel Beetle, but that's only picked up 3 points. I'm proud to say that my GGH 2013 Race Traveling Tip Exchange Notebook Traveler is tied for third place with 5 other bugs, each of those with only 2 points. Now, that's the bug that I released at a local meet and greet event, and it stirred up quite a bit of conversation. I'm sad to report that both of the coins I entered into the race and dropped into nearby caches have gone missing without any points. The first coin was in a cache that's been muggled, and the second coin was reported as missing from the first cache without anyone having seen it in the cache. I really hate when that happens.
Oh, so do I. And you know, I'm hesitant to even release mine. Now, it also means that mine, just like 5 other coins in the race, has absolutely 0 points. But I hope to fix that soon. And you know, there are still plenty of time for you to get your travelers into the race and compete for one of the many prizes donated by the leading geocachers. We'll include a link for the full information in the show notes, but also check out the standings page on tb-run.com to see where each one of those travelers are and where they stand.
Yeah, and I'm having a lot of fun checking those out, but I think it's about time now we bring in AirRaidFan, and we wanted to bring him in because he's the third most favorited hider in the U.S. according to Project-GC, a great site that we've mentioned a couple of times before. So, AirRaidFan, welcome to the show.
Hey, Chris. Hi, Daryl. How you guys doing?
We're doing pretty well.
Doing well.
You know, you had mentioned something to us in an email about not even realizing that you'd had anywhere near those favorite numbers, and I thought that was kind of an interesting point, is the hiders don't get any kind of notification for when their caches receive a favorite point.
Yeah, that's right. You know, the hiders get all the notifications when their caches are found, but until I saw your email about the favorites, I never really thought to go look at my caches and how many favorite points that accumulated. But when you gave me the Project GC website, and I went there and took a look at some of the information there, it was pretty fascinating to see that those accumulate. It would probably be neat if a found log on a geocache would include if the finder put a favorite point on the log, so you could keep track of it. But that was news to me. It was good news, and I appreciate it.
Well, and we appreciate you being on the show to talk about it. And really, we're just kind of trying to get a feel for how people can hide those caches that are worthy of favorite points. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that you mentioned is actually a very cool event that sounds like you pretty much do every year. The last one you mentioned was GC3VDP3, and we'll link to that in the show notes, of course, called the Falls of the Ohio Extreme Hike 2012 event. Don't know why that turned into a tongue twister. But tell us a little bit about that, because it really does sound great. And you even included a link which we'll include in our show notes as well, to a video that one of the attendees created.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks. The Falls of the Ohio is a state park, southern Indiana, on the Ohio River. It's at the McAlpin Lock and Dam. It's a 122-acre wildlife management area. And during the season, at the end of our drought, when the river levels drop, it exposes a 12 or 14-acre, 350-million-year-old Devonian fossil bed. It's only exposed for a few weeks. So every year I organize a hike, and we do it one time. It's a one-shot deal. It's a 6-hour, 6-mile trip. And if the river cooperates, we have a good time, and if it doesn't, well, we get flooded out. So last year's hike was a good trip.
Sweet. Now, I grew up in Ohio. However, it was in the northwest part of Ohio, so I don't know too much about the southern part. And this is in Indiana, right along the border there, along the Ohio River. Right. So when you say you get flooded out, what are we talking? Are we talking a few feet of water, or
actually? To give an example, in 2011 we had the event, and if there's a lot of rainfall in the Appalachian Mountain area, on the western slopes of the Appalachian Mountains, it all drains down the Ohio Valley, comes down the Ohio River, and flows through Louisville. Now, local rainfall in Louisville won't bother the river level that much, but if we get a lot of rainfall, especially it's hurricane season in the fall. So if we get a hurricane or a tropical storm that hits the East Coast and dumps a lot of rain and then gets beyond the western slope of the Appalachians, that's all coming down the river. And it's predictable. So I, for example, can look at the river gauges on the dams upriver from Louisville, Kentucky, and tell by the rise and fall of the water in those pools what's coming to McAlpin. So in 2011, we actually left the parking lot, walked down to the riverbank, got to the point we were going to cross the swiftest part of the water, and they sounded the warning sirens on the dam, and we stood there and watched as they opened the spillway gates, and here came a wall of water.
Wow.
Now, what happens, nothing really happens immediately because the water is coming through and the pool level rises very slowly. But while we stood there and watched, in about 30 minutes, the river rose about 12 inches. That's a lot of water. Now, the area that we're talking about during spring flooding can be under as much as 55 feet of water. So it's pretty unique for it to get down and be dry enough that you can walk out there in the month of October. But when the river rises, it comes pretty fast. It's got its own mind, and everyone that was there for the hike, and some of the people came from as far away as Ontario, Canada, to make this hike. I said, well, you've just seen something very unique. Not very many people get to stand here and watch the spillway gates open. That wasn't much of a consolation for people that drove several hundred miles to go see a 350-million-year-old fossil. So
exactly.
Well, it does sound like a great way for people who might not be familiar with the area, or for those who might not be really up for the hike on their own, to just get out there and essentially have a tour guide to help them out getting to and from the location.
And that's right. there's an element of risk involved in hiking on the river. If you're not aware of the danger signs, if you're not aware of where you can go and where you shouldn't go, then it's better to have a guide. I've been doing that, for 6 years now for the hike, but I've been hiking that area long before geocaching came along, and I was an avid fisherman down there since the 1970s. So I know the area pretty well. I know where you can walk and where you can't walk, and the shoreline of the area may look like it's pretty firm, but if you're by yourself and you step on river mud or step into river mud that looks pretty firm, and you sink to your knees and you're by yourself, you can't get yourself out. If someone's not nearby to pull you out, you're in deep trouble. So it's not recommended to go out there by yourself or go out there with someone that's never been there before. So it's a fun trip once a year, and everyone seems to enjoy it, and a lot of people come back for it every year.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like a great event. But since we're kind of looking for ways to encourage better caches, kind of give us some of the thought process behind setting up the event and what you have to go through to actually make that happen.
Well, the first thing about Falls of the Ohio, for example, is it has a wow factor. And anytime I set up an event or really any cache, I look for the wow value. And if you drive up to the Falls of the Ohio, you're going to see something that you've never seen before. And people that live in Louisville have driven across the bridge and over the Ohio River for years and years and years, and they knew that the dam was there, but they'd never known what was below it. And if you can get them to come in and see what's there, then that grabs them first. It's a unique place. It's family friendly if it's done correctly. There's a ton of educational information. So the longer you stay, the more you see and the more you learn. So when you do at the end of an event, and when you do leave, then you take away things, and the best advertisement is word of mouth. So I get a lot of email, or I hear people talk about the trip that they heard from their friends last year, and they intend to make it the next year. So it's the educational, family values, and the wow factor are the biggest things for me.
Well, you mentioned the educational value and wow factor, and one of the things that struck me about the favorite points as we were looking at your caches is the caches that have the most favorite points are your earth caches, starting with Groom Mining District, not Groom Mining District, okay, GC to GHE8, and that one has 190 favorite points on it, and wow. You just don't see a whole lot of caches, earth caches,
Mm-hmm.
A significant number of favorite points. So that's one of the things that really struck me is you've got so many favorite points on earth caches, and one earth cache has more favorite points than most hiders are going to have ever on any of their caches.
And the reason for that is just simple: location, location, location. The Groom Mining District is at Area 51. And Area 51 is near Rachel, Nevada, and Rachel, Nevada is right smack dab in the middle of the ET Highway. And when I went out with a team and did the ET Highway, we did, you do a cache every 530 feet. And you do this for hours and hours, and pretty soon it starts getting fairly robotic. So you start looking around for what else is going on, what else, there's got to be a change of pace somewhere. So we got into Rachel, and Rachel had a historical marker, and it has an ID4 marker from they filmed part of the Men in Black. One of the movies was filmed on location there, and I saw that, and it just clicked, and I said, this is an earth cache. And the historical marker gave some history about the mining area and the silver that was discovered there. So I jotted down a bunch of notes, and I took pictures of everything, and we continued on, with the highway. And when I got back home, I thought, even before geocaching, I was fascinated by Area 51. Area 51 and the UFO all the stealth fighter project, all those things went on out there. So it just seemed like a natural place for someone to stop, take a break. The Rachel, Nevada has the little alien, which itself is a total unique personality. and everyone stops at the little LEN to take their pictures. So there, literally 8 feet out their doorway is my earth cache. So you can't get in their shop, if you will, without walking past my earth cache. And there are a lot of great caches in Rachel, a lot of great, geocaches, and of course the ET highway right out front. But what people see when they pull into Rachel is, a place to take a break, and oh, by the way, here's an earth cache. So it has a lot to do with location. And then when they read the plaque and realize, the population of Rachel at the last census was 54 people. Here's 54 people that live 132 miles out in the middle of, the desert, which is fascinating to a lot of people. And this is what they do. There's a restaurant, a bar, a 3-room motel, and the ET highway that goes through the front. And it's never been a more popular place ever. So when I saw an opportunity for the earth cache and to describe a little bit about the history and the geology of the area, I jumped on it. And since then, people have just, I have a flag counter on the cache page, and it's been hit. I think at my last look, it's been hit between 7,000 and 9,000 times, just looked at. So, people know it's there, whether they drive right past it and they don't stop for it, but they're aware it's there. So it's breaking the monotony of the great ET highway power trail.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's good, interesting information that's easily accessible, and something that cachers might not even notice if it weren't for the earth cache that's placed there.
That's correct. And another key is this: the cache page is essentially 1 page long. It's not, scroll all the way to the bottom and read, 15 paragraphs of information to learn anything. It's a quick read. At the bottom of the page, there are 3 or 4 very simple, straightforward questions. And so you learn essentially all there is to learn about the area in a couple of paragraphs and some pictures that are on the page. So it's not time consuming. It's fast education, fast information, fun information, a photo if you want to take it, and a memory to take with you, and not a lot of strain on the brain.
Nice. Now, your next earth cache that you have has 167 favorites, which alone is incredible for an earth cache. It's called Playa. Tell us a little bit about that one.
First of all, it's pronounced playa.
Oh, sorry.
I was reminded of that when I listed the earth cache. Playa is a dry lake bed. It's roughly halfway between Rachel, Nevada and Tonopah. And as we were continuing on with the ET highway, we're riding across 375, and there's another geocache along that highway. It's up on the mountainside. It's an ammo box. So we stopped to do the ammo box because here we were, these 4 robots in a car stopping every 530 feet and doing the ET caches. And all of a sudden we came around a bend in the road, and here's a dry lake bed, and in the middle of the dry lake bed is a huge boulder. Now, everyone that drives by that spot has to look at that boulder and say, how in the heck did that get there? And where did it come from? Because it defies logic for this boulder to be in the middle of this dry lake bed. So we stopped, and a couple of guys went up the side of the mountain to do the ammo box hide, and a couple more went down the highway and logged some ETs, and I went out on the dry lake bed and took some pictures of the boulder and got some dimensions and shot some coordinates, and we got back in the car and we left. Well, when I got home, I did a Google search on the geology of the area, and there wasn't really any information about why this boulder's in the middle of this dry lake bed. So I put together an earth cache, and I based it on the playa and how dry lake beds are formed around the world, and I wove into this story the racing rocks of Death Valley. And racing rocks are these small rocks that are in the desert, and they are pushed around the desert floor on a playa by 90-mile-an-hour winds, and they leave a wake, they leave a trail. So I matched up the imagery of the racing rocks with the boulder, and I put them on the cache page. So they all look to be similar in size, and actually the mountainside, the mountain range behind them looks about the same as well. So I asked the question, to stir a little bit of the imagination, do you think this rock is a racer? And you're sitting here looking, you're parked on the side of the road, and you're looking at a rock that's 9 feet tall, and you have to wonder, well, is this a racer? How big are the other rocks on the cache page? Can't really tell. So it just asks the question, and you gotta and you check the lake bed. It has some silica and some clay, and you make a determination of that. So it's a break along the ET highway. It's good information. The boulder came from the other side of the highway on a mountainside. I can't explain how it got where it is, and I kind of put the question out there. Give me your opinion of how you think this rock got and where it is, and no one's ever been able to explain it. Everyone thinks it came from where it came from. No one can explain how it got there. So it's a quick stop. It's a one-page earth cache. It's a break in the action. It's something to see, something to wonder about. It inspires the imagination and the thought process, and people take things away from that. And if you do 1,035 millimeters in a guardrail, and then all of a sudden here's a boulder in the middle of a dry lake bed, which one are you going to remember? So it gets a lot of favorite points that I've seen recently because of that.
Well, again,
I have a simple answer for it. It's aliens.
It absolutely is aliens. Yeah, there's
aliens
no doubt.
Put it out there.
Yeah, hey, we've seen the aliens because we came back from Tonopah, and we came right past the playa, looking back up on the mountain ranges, probably 3-4 miles distant, and we saw laser lights, and so we knew something was going on. And then not far down the road from that dry lake bed, at about 90 miles an hour, we passed an alien in the road, standing right in the road. There's no doubt about it. And I'm telling you, aliens have long horns. And they're free rangers too. And they weigh about 400 pounds.
Well, getting back to the cache, again, it's one that's great location, easy for people to do, just off the road. But this one made you think a little bit more, it sounds like, than the mining district.
It does, because people, they see that and they go, there's no way that this can possibly be a racer. However, if you read the logs on the earth cache, there have been people that have said, absolutely, there's no doubt this is a racer. The wind has pushed this rock around the desert, but the rocks never move. The coordinates for the rock are what they are, and obviously the rock hasn't moved in the few years that it's been there. So in a few years, the earth cache has been there. But you do have to make a determination of whether you think that the wind, a 90-mile-an-hour wind, could push this rock around on the desert.
All right. Now, another one that you've got that I recognize the name because my mother was really big into this one, closer to home, is Mammoth Cave, the world's longest cave. And that one you've got 138 favorite points last I looked.
Mammoth Cave is, it's the world's longest cave. And, it's the last time any mapping was done, I think it's about 400 miles long. It's totally family friendly. The earth cache coordinates will take you to the visitor center, and from the visitor center, visitors get to select which one of about a dozen or 15 tours they want to take in Mammoth Cave. So, there's 22 miles of cycling trails, 50 miles of hiking trails. The Green River flows through. We have kayak caches on the river. So it's a family-friendly event. People pull up. They see a menu of things that they can do. And it's again, a lot of information's right before them. It's a fast read. It's an easy, it's easy parking. There's no hiking involved. And it's their introduction to Mammoth Cave State Park.
Nice. Now, I have memories growing up, taking vacations down to Mammoth Cave and wandering through the cave. They turn out the lights. It's completely black. And that's the last time I remember seeing my parents. No.
Might be the last time they recall seeing you too. You see, but I've taken that tour before, and it's pretty. When they turn all the lights out, and the guy stands there and flicks a lighter, and you realize just how much light that a big lighter puts off in a totally complete and awesomely dark cave. You know, that's pretty striking. And people again people take memories away from Mammoth Cave State Park. And you know, and I have to add too, the oldest earth cache in Kentucky is in that park. And I went down there to do the oldest earth cache in Kentucky, which had only been approved for a couple of weeks when I went down to take a look at it. And Mammoth Cave was my first entry into earth caching. And again, location, 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 because all the traffic that comes into the parks right at my earth cache. So
yeah, definitely a big tourist location, a lot of draws, so it's got the benefit of a lot of people being able to do it. But the next one, from what you told us about the event that you do there, doesn't sound like it's quite as accessible, and that's Falls of the Ohio, which only has 77 favorite points.
You know, Falls of the Ohio was, I should say, only a geocache hidden at the entrance to the Falls of the Ohio State Park Interpretive Center. And there's a lot more to see at the park than just that cache. And it was actually hidden at the signature entrance, if you will, to the park. So in the meantime, in the last year or so, the state park system in Indiana has invited all geocachers to pull all their caches off their state park property. So that cache had to move as well. But there are so many caches there that I think the interest in the state park in general gets diluted across and watered down across a lot of caches. There's probably 30 geocaches, and I know that I have 15 or so earth caches in the immediate area. So that's a fascinating place, and a lot of people stop. A lot of people go into the interpretive center, and it's again, it's a neat place to see. But you don't have to go out onto the fossil beds to see that particular cache.
Nice. I'm looking at the cache page. You got 3 simple questions to answer, and what I like is a link right underneath the questions to send you an email.
Right. Yeah. Just click on that, and you know, and there's the email. And again, you know, it's one page of information, and 3 simple questions to answer. You can stand there and look around and see the answers. And what was kind of neat about that earth cache was, for a long time before we had to move the geocaches, the earth cache and the actual geocache that were there shared the exact same coordinates. So you could stand on you could pick up the geocache and see it, and then and do the earth cache at the same time from exactly the same spot.
Now, not all of the caches that have favorite points are earth caches. And next one I kind of want to talk about is the multis, in part because I think multis kind of get a bad reputation, at least around most parts of the U.S., as being just challenging and not really worth the hide. So let's kick it off with bronze, which is GC1DCJ2, which you got 26 favorite points.
The bronze is the multicache is located in a cemetery in Louisville called Cave Hill Cemetery. It's a cemetery that was founded in 1848. It's a wonderful cemetery and arboretum. It's one of the 7 wonders of Louisville, and it has, in the springtime, all the flowers and the trees. It's just a beautiful place to visit. The bronze, the theme for the bronze came from all of the cemetery, the plots that people have in the cemetery for loved ones, where very expensive artistic bronze statuary is put on these sites. So the bronze will take you around the cemetery to several of these, you know, better more artistic places, and Colonel Harlan Sanders, for example, everyone eats Colonel Sanders Kentucky Fried Chicken. He's in there, and he has a bronze bust on his site, and so you'll visit him and some other famous people that have bronzes on their sites, and you'll gather some information. But it's like, you're right about multis. Multicaches over the years have kind of faded. They have less favor now than the quick park and grabs. So not very many people do that type of a multicache because it's a little complicated and it takes a little while to do it. But when people are finished doing it, especially the artistic value of the multicache and the scenic beauty of Cave Hill Cemetery, when they leave there, they take a lot more than just a smiley face. It's a bigger experience than just doing a cache. When they leave, they can say that you need to go to Louisville and see Cave Hill Cemetery because it's a beautiful place. So it gets favorites because people when they complete it, they've completed more than just that cache. And also, I might add, of the caches that I have that are in that cemetery, I don't hide any final locations. No physical containers that I hide are inside a cemetery ever, anywhere. So once you gather all the information, you have to leave the cemetery and go somewhere, which happens to be a park nearby, and then the final container is actually a little bronze container. So it matches the theme of the multicache inside the cemetery. So it's
Nice.
It's neat. It doesn't get a lot of hits. I get a lot of people that have started the multicache, but actually come back a year later to complete it because there's so many steps. And Cave Hill Cemetery probably has, I don't know, 20 miles of roads with no markings, no lanes, no intersections, no right-of-ways, no stop signs. So if you go in there and don't have a good map of the cemetery, then you can really get turned around and get lost. And because of that, there have been people that have said, well, we'll come back and finish this another time. But you know what? They come back and they finish it. So it's a pretty neat place.
Yeah, I've seen that problem with a lot of cemeteries, but I love the cemeteries for some of the history that's in there, and you really don't have a good way to do it without some kind of cache or tour book or something to tell you, where the great locations are to visit and get that little sampling of history.
That's right, and some of the people that are buried in Cave Hill, for example, the woman that wrote the birthday song, "Happy Birthday to You," she's there. Now you can go by the Cave Hill Cemetery office, and they'll give you a map of all the dignitaries and all the famous people that are buried in the cemetery. In fact, another cache that I have there, another multi-cache, is based on just knowing the plot locations and not the GPS coordinates of where certain people that are recognizable names are interred, and you have to use the Cave Hill map to go find where these people are, get some information off their stones or their monuments in order to move on. But it's a huge place. It's 500 acres. There are 22,000, I think, people interred there. And it's a beautiful place to see in the spring, and it's beautiful in the fall.
Very cool. And the next one is one that I really think I'd want to do if I had the chance. And I'm probably going to butcher the name, so please correct me if I don't get it right. Bushel Train Depot, 1898.
Yeah, Buchel Train Depot is it was unique in its time. It's actually a train depot that was in Buchel, Kentucky. It was relocated to its current site and restored. It's a very small. It's not much bigger than a 4-car garage. And what was unique about it was, at the time, no one in our area had ever seen a label cache. No one had ever seen a sticker by itself fixed on something that had the coordinates. So on the loading dock of the Buchel Train Depot, there are overhead lights. They date back to the early 1900s, late 1800s. And inside one of these lights, I'd put a sticker that said, "Danger of shock. Do not touch. In case of emergency, call." And then there were 2 numbers below that to call, and those were the coordinates for the final. And the final was located, fairly nearby. But it was for the longest time, no one had ever seen a stop off on a multicache or an offset that didn't have a container. So they had no idea. People wandered around and looked and looked and looked, and DNF, and it must be missing, and needs maintenance, and it was always there. So it was a pretty good experience.
So you have two different things, and it sounds like in the multi area that make it attractive. First is that great location again, but the second one, it sounds like it's more of a quick but interesting challenge.
Yeah, it's you don't want to lose interest. It's a unique visit. Hopefully something you've not seen before, a site that you've not been to before as well. But again, it's something that you can go visit. If you complete it, then you get to take something away. Especially at Mutual Depot, I've had, especially early on when it was first published, everyone that did that cache that were from somewhere else besides Louisville asked permission to duplicate the cache elsewhere. And so I've had the pleasure of going to other towns and local to Louisville and see that cache replicated in other places. So that's kind of neat that people thought enough about it they wanted to have one in their name.
Mm-hmm. Now, you also do some puzzle caches. You seem to be able to cover the gambit of all types of caches. And the one I'm looking at is Ashes to Dust. That's GC1B9J3.
Ashes to Dust has wow value and it has shock value. The cache starts out at an American Legion post, where they had an area behind the Legion Post building where they actually cremated American flags. At the end of their life, they disposed of them. You start there, and you have to do projection with your GPS based on some information you get off the marker. And then that'll take you about 820 or 30 feet down the street towards the Ohio River to what really becomes the hook on this cache. Is no one expects what they're going to learn when they get to the final, because at the final they're standing at a ballpark. The ballpark has a couple of baseball diamonds and bleachers and concession stand or two and parking on the street, and it's like, oh gee whiz, here's a park. What am I going to find here? Well, guess what? At this park there's a monument, and what the monument says is during the Civil War, Confederate soldiers were buried at this field, and this is a cemetery. And in the 1920s, the leadership of the Jeffersonville, Indiana area kept looking at this cemetery and saying, this area is basically of no use to us whatsoever. What can we do to make this useful to the public? So they took all the markers off the cemetery and they turned it into a city park. And then over time, it became a little league baseball diamond. So when you get to the final on the cache, what you read is a marker that says, that there are hundreds of Civil War soldiers buried under the baseball field. Now, what was interesting about that was that cache was placed in 2006 or 7. Just a year ago, our local news channels got wind that there was a marker over there that said that this was a cemetery. And so it became breaking news on the 5:30 news. And you know how that works. When one channel picks it up, then the competing news channels, they rush over, and they had a satellite truck parked out and had a live person on site. And this was a brand new discovery. Even though the cache had been there for years, they just discovered that the baseball field was actually a cemetery. So they had to cease use of the park temporarily, and they ran ground sonar units over it, and they found that there were in fact burial sites at the baseball field. So that's I've been by there since then. It lost its news value and it kind of faded away in the local news, and then I've been by there since, and they're playing baseball there again. So but that's kind of the story of that. And when people see the wow, the shock value at the end of that multicache, it's it's just, you stand there and you look and you go, my gosh. The only marker that survived was relocated to another cemetery, and it's just there on kind of on display.
Mm-hmm.
It's the only thing that's left of all the soldiers that are buried there, and there's no record of who they are.
Well, it's good to see the news going to a geocaching site and not calling it a bomb. I just have to throw that out there.
Excellent point. Now, let's move on to traditional caches, because you do have a bunch of traditionals as well, and one of them's got 20 favorite points, and that's Arf's Patch Reef Beach, which I know I was going to mispronounce if I did it any quicker than that, but it's GCKDET. Tell us a little about that one.
Yeah, you pronounced that one well. Patch Reef Beach is actually on the island at the falls of the Ohio River. It was the very first cache that was ever allowed on that island. It's at the lower end of the island at the lower spillway gates, and it was an ammo box. And again, you had the only access to the island is either on the hike. You either had to pay on the page. I have listed the Army Corps of Engineers phone number where you can call and get the pool levels and what the trends are for the rivers rising and falling, and a lot of warnings on there about how to walk how to hike the Ohio River and the island, or you can paddle across. And again, it's right down at the bottom of the island, the downstream end by the lower spillway gates. And if you go to the lower spillway gates, and especially if you look at C.W. Gladstone's video on YouTube of the 2012 extreme hike, you'll see the visual impact of the spillway gates at the bottom of that island, because you can go down and stand next to the wall, and you're 5 or 6 feet tall, standing against a wall of about 30 feet of water coming out literally 18 inches from you. It's a powerful and awesome sight. And anyone that makes that trek or paddles across and finds the cache, they get to see that. And it's another memory that you take away. And there are many cachers that have been to that cache and seen that picture is now on their profile page.
Nice.
Yeah, so overwhelmingly, it sounds like the secret to your favorites is the location, but still having good caches at that location.
Yeah, the cache was actually an ammo box, and there's a neat story that goes with that too. A team of cachers paddled across to do the cache, and standing as they walked into the woods, where the cache is actually cabled to the bottom of a sycamore tree. The sycamore tree is the world's best shock absorber on an island that's going to be submerged under 55 feet of water at times. The sycamore tree is the best thing to attach to. So it was cabled to that. Someone was in the woods ahead of this team of cachers and had found the ammo box and didn't know what it was and didn't know how to open an ammo box. So this person picked a rock up and proceeded to just bash the ammo box until he eventually bashed it until he could get it open. And when he got it open, he realized there wasn't anything of any value inside, so he just left it. Well, so what I did, I left the smashed ammo box there. There's a picture of it on the cache page. And I hid another cache adjacent to it, so that when you go today, and what you'll find is this colorful ammo box that was actually painted by a 6th or 7th grade school class for the guy that gave that cache to me as an award for a hike that I had made, and I went down and hid it on the island, and it's still there today. So you get to see that, and it's it's an elementary school project that was smashed by a muggle and found by many on an interesting place and a really cool trip. So it's a nice cache.
Oh, that does sound great. And you have 818 caches that you've hidden. So people have plenty of caches that you've hidden that they can go find. And all they have to do is hit that link that we'll throw in the show notes to your profile.
Great. Yeah, 818. And in fact, 21 caches approved just in the last, or 25 caches approved just in the last 2 days. And, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this. One of the best motivators for good caches to anyone that hides a lot of caches is the reviewer that he gets to deal with. And in Kentucky, we have Iron Horse Reviewer, and he's a great guy. I probably wouldn't have continue to hide caches the way that I do if I ran into roadblocks every time I turned a corner and tried to hide a cache, or someone found something wrong with it. Just tonight when I got home an hour before we started this, I submitted a cache, number 818, and it was approved just an hour or so before this program. So that's an invaluable asset to a hider. If you have a reviewer that I'm known for pushing the edge sometimes, pushing the envelope a little bit. But once people learn, or your reviewer learns who you are, what you're doing, and that it looks a little risky on at times, and he's kind of on the fence. But when he falls, he always falls on the right side. So it's good to have a valuable reviewer, and I have one of those, and I appreciate it.
Nice. That's a great story. I have to ask, have you gotten the email alert for the first to find yet? On that new cache? Yeah.
No, actually, the 25 most recent hides are in Taylorsville Lake, which is a wildlife management area and a state park. It's 25 miles southeast of Louisville, and these caches are 3.5 terrains. So there's no trails. This is park in the parking lot at the WMA and go bushwhacking, and it's going to be about a 4-miler. I was in there today, and walked through freshly fallen snow. The only tracks in the snow were mine and a few deer that are in there, and the only trail is a deer trail, and those are at every elevation. So you can pick your elevation and go, but you're going to do a lot of climbing, a lot of sliding, and there have been no finds on those caches yet.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you again for joining us. It's been a pleasure getting to get a little bit more information about how your caches became favorites.
Well, thank you, Daryl, and thank you, Chris. It was a great pleasure to be here.
And for everyone listening, check out the show notes. You can get a lot more information on what he's doing and all of those great caches hidden by AirRaidFan. And also, don't forget that you can email or call us with your questions and comments for those next few shows coming up. Next week, we're talking about Tools of the Trail. Then in 2 weeks, we're talking with Veronica Belmont about the future of location-based gaming, and we'd love to hear your input on where you think location-based gaming is going to go.
Now, Daryl, you can check out the Cacheamaniac website at cacheamaniacs.com for more on the GeoGearHeads, including show notes from this and all our episodes. We love hearing from our listeners, so leave us feedback by calling 206-350-3647, by emailing geogearheads@cacheamaniacs.com, or through social media. Your support helps keep the Cacheamaniac shows coming. GeoGearHeads is produced by Chris Umfenauer and Daryl Wattenberg. This show is copyright 2013 by Daryl Wattenberg, all rights reserved.
Cache with the Cacheamaniacs.